All right, that is as far as devolution is concerned. And of course, one of the major questions that Kenyans have been asking is the new administration really working, keeping their promises as presented in their manifesto? Has President William Ruto failed, contrary to what he says he is doing? Is it a better Kenya? Is it Kenyans living in fear in their own country? Really, what are the risks that you face when you perhaps critique the government or the government officials on social media? We have vividly heard from certain, of course, government persons and leaders in government saying they're not bothered at all by anybody criticizing them on social media. But there are other voices asking, is it really what they say? I want to appreciate once again my guest in studio who will help us dissect this matter. And as we're speaking, it's not funny really. Lives have been lost. Kins are crying out for their, loved ones to return home, even as we're speaking of the release and resurfacing of some of the abductees. Hussein Khalid, CEO of Vocal Africa, thank you so much for creating time to be here.
Thank you for having me.
I also want to appreciate Otieno Namwaya, who was here earlier on, Associate Director for Africa Human Rights Watch. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
Now, gentlemen, even as we're speaking, because I want to hear from Hussein Khalid, I know he's been, mtetezi wa haki for about more than 15 years, and perhaps arrested quite a number of times as well. And he's shared his ordeal even at our sister station at Spice FM. But just to share with you the few people or the success of resurfacing of a number of Kenyans that were feared to be abducted. There's a tweet here by Kibet, if I get that name correctly. And I want to share cartoonist Gideon Kibet, aka Kibet Bull, confirmed his release after being abducted by suspected state agents. Says he was dropped off in Luanda, Vihiga County, early Monday, January 6th. And of course, you're seeing that. He's saying they dropped me, and in fact, we're interrogating who is the they, dropped me in Luanda, Vihiga at around 3 to 4 a.m. leo. Sikuwa najua where to enter or book a room. Kidogo from your disco matanga came in, danced mpaka 6 a.m. when I went to book a ticket. We are glad he is safe, but there are many others, including Billy. We're glad they're safe. But let me start with Khalid. This one time, I think if it was an abduction or an arrest at around Kenyatta, and you shared that, and you even said the OCS couldn't really tell you the reason why you were, within their premises. In fact, you said you were being held for no mistake.
Yeah, so in many cases when individuals are arrested, the police, 99% of the time, particularly the officer commanding station, the OCS, his response will always be, we are waiting for orders. This is an individual who is in charge of a police station, and that police station serves a certain jurisdiction. By law, he has certain responsibilities. He is the authority in that area, and he must make decisions based on what he understands to be the law. So, like the last time when I was arrested in Mombasa, this is last week, until we arrived in the courtroom, we did not know the charge we were arrested with.
But what is the period of time between that?
We were arrested around 1 or 2 a.m., 1 or 2 p.m. in the afternoon, sorry. We were held at Central Police Station the whole afternoon. We kept asking them, why are you holding us? What is the charge? At least let us know the charge. They couldn't tell us the charge, and they told us they are waiting orders from above. I was like, you are the OCS, you have arrested me. The law is very clear. At the point of arrest, the officer, one, must identify themselves.
Right.
If you're in plain clothes, you must have an ID. If you're uniformed, you must tell the person you're arresting who you are, from which station, and all that. And number two, you must inform the person you're arresting the charge against which you are curtailing him from enjoying his freedom.
Yes.
So you must be told that. So we were held, and every time, even the lawyer came to the police station to ask, so you've arrested these individuals, on what charge? They couldn't even tell. So this is why we say very clearly, police in Kenya do not operate as per the constitution, do not operate as per the laws of the land. They operate in accordance with orders from above, wherever above is, whatever those orders are. And that is wrong. That is not right. We are being taken back to those dark days, and we can't afford to have a police service that is not independent, that is waiting for orders, I don't know, from State House or from the Interior Cabinet Secretary. We don't know where above is, but we must ensure that police are independent and are operating within the confines of the law.
Now that's very, very interesting, because what then you are saying, I know you followed closely what's happening in the political platform as well,
yes,
and as far as the abductions are concerned, but you do know that the president also spoke on this matter,
yes,
acknowledging that there are some actions or abduction or extreme activities happening. But some fingers are pointing at the former deputy president, Rigathi Gachagua. Some of the human rights or groups, civil society groups, are referring to the state. Now, what about that sort of, uncertainty? Is it a political war? Is it then the former deputy president? Is it the state? Or whichever, it should just stop?
Yeah, so I believe as human rights practitioners,
yes,
and even Kenyans out there, many of us believe that the abductions are political. They are not in any way informed by criminal activities, by the abductees, if I may call it that. Probably these abductees have, rubbed certain political individuals or interests the wrong way. And they are thinking probably the law in itself and going after these individuals using the criminal law may not get the required results. So they resort to, political machinations, abduct these individuals. And the question that everyone is asking, what is the abductor's end goal? Or those who are instructing the abductors to do this, what is their final aim? Or what are they determined to do? Is it related to 2027? Is it 2032, or is it beyond 2032? Because any Kenyan will tell you, we know we are not a banana republic. We have a constitution, and one of the best in Africa for that matter.
Okay.
We have laws in this land that are supposed to be, applied. We are a law-abiding country. So if individuals have wronged, if they've done anything, on social media, we have very many laws that these individuals can be, charged with if they've made mistakes. Why are we not doing that?
Okay.
Why are we resorting to extra legal means to address issues that are rubbing certain political interests the wrong way? So without a doubt, these abductions are politically motivated, and we want, this country to be run, and the president keeps saying this, that the law is what will guide us at the end of the day.
Right.
That we must abide by the law.
Right.
But those who are abducting, whether directions are coming from State House or any other place, they are not playing by the Constitution.
Now, I just want to take a very quick bite to listen to a glimpse of what President William Ruto had to say from his own mouth regarding these abductions just most recently. And I will then hear from Otieno Namwaya, who is an associate director at Human Rights Kenya. But even so, Khalid, as you're speaking, you have heard Ishungwa say that some of these youth abducting themselves are, they're abducting themselves, or they are faking their abductions to tarnish the government's image. In fact, he added to say that some hire Airbnbs with their girlfriends, I'm just quoting it directly, and disappear for 3 days and say they have been abducted. Is it? Let's hear from President William Ruto and come back with the panelists.
Nataka niulize wazazi, kila mzazi tafadhali, hawa watoto ni baraka kwetu, tumepatiwa na Mwenyezi Mungu. Kila mzazi achunge watoto wake, tuweke kushughulikia watoto wetu. Sisi kama serikali tutafanya sehemu yetu, na yale yamesemekana mambo ya abduction tutakomesha, ndio vijana wa Kenya waweze kuishi kwa amani, na vile vile wawe na nidhamu na wawe wangwana, tuweze kujenga Kenya tukiwa pamoja.
Let me hear from Otieno Namwaya at this point in time. The president has spoken. He said, take care of your children. Let us bring back that moral, values back to the country. The government will do their part, including dealing with the abduction matter. You're not convinced that this does not come from the state?
First of all, before I come to that question, let me just try to unpack some things.
Yes.
Because this issue of abductions has mutated over time. Because there are things that happened in June, July, but after July, a few other things started happening. And then from October, thereabouts, we have had a totally different phase of abductions that we are seeing today. There are those people who are picked up or snatched from the protesters in June, in the middle of the protesters, and snatched and thrown into a police truck and taken to police stations. Those were many. And some of them were basically extorted by police because police were demanding between 3,000 to 10,000. They're asking for 10,000, but people could negotiate.
This is evident? This is substantiated?
Yeah, substantiated. We did research, we have published. People could negotiate up to 3,000. And this happened across all police stations where people are arrested. So that is one. Then there are those who are arrested, taken to police stations, and then picked up by non-uniformed people and taken to abandoned buildings. Those are also abductions. These were happening in June, July, August. But then there are also those who were picked up on the streets by non-uniformed people, taken to police stations briefly, and then taken out and taken to forests, abandoned buildings, warehouses, and other private structures. But then there are also those who are picked up by non-uniformed people and never taken to a police station at all. And some of these people were lucky enough to be freed, and they're alive today. But there are those who were taken and never released, and they have never been seen to date. These uniformed people are the same people who we are wondering whether they are police officers or not. But if they are not police officers, they would not be able to take people into police stations and out. And they would not be able to go into police stations and pick other people, specific people they were looking for, and picking from police stations.
So what you're saying is there are people who are then picked from police stations?
Yes.
All right?
Yes, there were people who were picked from police stations. There were people who were taken to police stations and picked by non-uniformed people, and they were never seen again. So these are all mutating phases of abductions. Now what we have today is a group of non-uniformed people using either a Subaru or TX, Toyota TX. And recently, I think from December last year, we have been seeing now the Probox coming back. They're using Probox and picking people. Now, who are these people?
All right. Yes, that's a big question.
Yeah, who are these people? From our understanding, by the way, there are a number of police officers who are unhappy with what's happening. And they will tell you for sure what's going on. And when you inquire, they tell you it's a group of officers from different units who have been put together. But they're not operating under the normal non-command of the police. They're receiving orders from outside the police, from individuals outside the police. So that's why you see some names trending, so and so. Those are people who are sitting in some private spaces elsewhere and issuing orders to a group of officers who have been put together who are carrying out the abductions.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to do that and just hear from the ODM, or rather former Premier, former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, who also spoke on this matter. And then we can pick it up from there. Very interesting, revelations here tonight. But here's the voice of Raila Odinga.
Lives have been lost in the course of this year. Innocent lives. But we have also seen something that we want to see end with this year. The issue of abductions of innocent people. This is a primitive thing. And it is something that is very strange. You cannot live in a country where people disappear or people are abducted for no other reason and kept incommunicado for a long time. That shows that there's no government. The government must take this matter seriously. And this thing must end completely.
Now, Khalid, the IG said that for avoidance of doubt, the National Police Service is not involved in any abduction. All right, this is what he said, and that there's no police station in the country whatsoever that is holding the reported abductees. This is contrary to what you are saying. And as a common Mwananchi, let's talk about someone somewhere in the rural area, there's a back and forth and internal conflict on who to believe this far. Now, you are telling us your own personal ordeal, that you were in a police station. Is this a matter of either? Because he's saying that there are police, all right? Otieno is saying that police who are unhappy with the situation. But then you're saying that there are some who are getting orders from above. Are we looking at a disconnect, a rotten system? What are we looking at this point in time as a country?
First of all, yes, it's true that the IG is telling us that these individuals are not in a police station.
Mm-hmm.
What he's not telling us is where they are, not where they are not. Fine, they are not in a police station. You are the Inspector General of Police.
Right.
You have hundreds of officers working under you across the country. You have the DCI. You have all these units. I believe they must have an idea of who is behind this and where these individuals are being held. You cannot tell us that you are the Inspector General and you have, whether it's a gang, whether it's a band of individuals doing these things, and you have this, not even the slightest idea of what is happening. So what the Inspector General is telling us might be true. Maybe they are not in any of these police stations. But why is he not telling us where they are? Because I believe he must have information, even if directing him to where these individuals might be. As he says, some of the victims were arrested by uniformed officers. After their arrest, they were taken to police stations.
All right.
Some of them, paid bribes and stuff like that, and they were released. And some of them who were arrested by uniformed officers, to date, we don't know where they are. They've gone missing completely. So where are these individuals? You arrested them. They were in your custody. They were in police cells. Plainclothes individuals, officers and so on, came and picked them from your police station, whether it's Rongai or where it might be. And to date, those individuals are unaccounted for. So who are these individuals who came to your police station and picked inmates that you had? Tell Kenyans.
All right.
Why are you not just telling us they are not here? Yes, fine, they are not here. But where are they? Whom did you release them to? And where did those people take those individuals to? You must tell Kenyans that.
Right.
And this is what we are saying. The numbers we are seeing out there, as Namoya would tell you, is a tip of the iceberg. There are many people who are afraid. They went, families went to police stations and, they were threatened. So you are the people who are causing problems to this government. You want to overthrow the government. And those people are afraid of even going back there to ask where their kins are.
Right.
So these are issues Kenyans must ask. And we must find out, because, you can hide some of these things, but you can't hide them forever. And the good thing is that we have the Gen Z generation now. And we can unearth this. The other day they were talking of, a house, and they had coordinates and latitudes and cameras and what and all that. We must know the truth. And we are not being told everything by those who are out there, who are in the security authorities. And more importantly, I think I would say that for those who have been abducted and those that have been returned, in many cases they are threatened not to speak, not to tell us where they are. Some of them were blindfolded, if you look at the Longton case, But then you can have a rough idea of where these places are. You know, there's Karen, there's Magadi, there's Karura Forest, and such kinds of places. So we must be told what is happening in this country.
Now, I want to take the feedback, but before I do, Otieno, it's very interesting, some of the feedback I'm receiving tonight, which I will share with you. But I'll just pick one. There's a Kenyan here who's asking, is it now that anyone who disappears and found perhaps dead, I'm trying to be able to read that in a way that does not evoke emotions back at home, is then a victim of state abductions? You know, they're saying, fine, there could be abductions by the state, but there are disappearances based on other involvements. How do you know the difference between a state abduction and somebody who just got probably into a sour deal and then, you know, was found killed, and may their souls rest in peace? So
there are things here we need to be clear about. When you're talking in terms of human rights, the state is the duty bearer.
Right.
And by duty bearer, we mean they have the responsibility to provide protection and to ensure justice where violations have happened. So whether you've been abducted by a criminal gang or by a state agent, there's a violation that has happened. The criminal gang is a crime. When a crime happens, it's the police duty to investigate and ensure that the family gets justice.
Right.
Have those investigations happened? No. When it's a state agent that has been involved in those abductions or whatever it is, and somebody has died or missing, again, investigations need to happen. And who should facilitate those investigations? It is the state, the police, the IPOA, state agencies. Have they done the investigations? No.
Are you trying to say there's no investigation underway whatsoever, no probe? Are you cancelling every other that has begun?
Let's link
if there's
that
any?
To the clip of the president that you have just played.
All right.
He says, let your children behave. Na hii mambo ya abductions tutakomesha. We shall stop it. But there's no talk of accountability. How do you do accountability if there are no investigations? IPOA is supposed to investigate. I do know that there are cases we have encountered in Nairobi and outside Nairobi where we have interviewed families where IPOA was and collected statements. But IPOA has not presented anyone in court. We know why. Because sometime around August, September, IPOA and Kenya National Commission on Human Rights received a lot of threats. And either they slowed down investigations or completely stopped the investigations.
Might you know from where? The threats
from state officials.
Have you been threatened?
I talked of IPOA. I could talk about my case.
You said some rights groups.
No, I mean IPOA was threatened.
Okay.
The investigating agency is IPOA.
All right.
And Kenya National Commission, they were threatened and they stopped the investigations. We need the state to come out clean and say they have not threatened IPOA, and why IPOA has not investigated these cases.
All right.
Yeah, I think the threats were public. We had this, and I think the president, I think, was it in reference to Githurai or something like that, and saying even...
Back last year, is it?
Yes, back last year. So, and we know that most of these independent institutions have been starved of resources. You know, they get money for administration so that they continue existing, but there's no money for programs. They can't move around. So you pay your rent, you pay your salaries, you exist, but then the resources to now move around, to go and follow up on the cases and stuff like that, Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, IPOA, they've complained that they don't have those resources. So the idea is to say, well, if you have a problem, go to IPOA, because IPOA is there. People are in the office. The officers are there. If you go there, you'll see them there. But can they go out and follow up? Do they have fuel for their vehicles? Are they able to move around, to investigate, to, you know, do the necessary probing? Probably not. This is what at least we are getting from those who are inside there. So this issue, and this is the question everyone is asking: to what goal?
Right.
To what end? Why is this happening? What is the target? Because we've never seen abductions of this magnitude. I mean, as you said, I've been doing this for 10, 15 years now, more than. And in the 2010s, we had abductions and killings of Muslim youth in Mombasa in, you know, the counterterrorism efforts and initiatives. But even then, it wasn't of this magnitude, you know, and it wasn't also on cartoons and, social media and stuff like that. It's really like, why is this happening? These individuals who are abducting, because if you look at the CCTV cameras, they know very well what they're doing. They have their caps on, they have their masks, and Kenyans want to know why. I mean, because at the end of the day, if you speak to families of those who are abducted, and those who've come back, the Kitengela 3 and others, they're telling us that, these officers have something in common. There are questions that they keep asking. Who is funding you? Who is giving you the money to do this? And this question, Kenyans have answered so publicly and so openly. We are all funding these protests because each and every Kenyan goes out by him or herself and goes to the streets because they want change in this country. Right. So we must find ways of addressing our issues and doing that without unnecessarily violating the rights. And my last point, because we keep hearing this coming up every other day. Yes. Oh, freedom of expression. There are limits, there is this. The rights are not, just without limits and all that. Article 25 of the Constitution of Kenya speaks of rights that cannot be limited. Rights that cannot be, even if we are in a state of emergency, which we are not, even if we are in a state of war, the Constitution is very clear. There are 4 rights that cannot be limited by any means. And the first one is freedom from cruel, inhuman, degrading treatment or punishment. By any means, irrespective of what is happening.
All right.
You can't do that. Slavery or servitude, that's the second one. The third one is habeas corpus, an order of habeas corpus. So if someone is arrested, dead, and we've seen how these rights have been violated throughout. When you abduct an individual, that's a cruel, inhuman treatment. How do you justify an abduction because you're saying mtoto amekosa adabu? Absolutely out of hand. It's responding to a mosquito bite with a rungu. You can't do that. So we have to be very open and clear on these issues. These rights that are being violated as per the Constitution should not be happening.
All right. Talking about responding to a mosquito bite with a rungu. Otieno, I want to come back to you, but allow me to read some of the comments that are coming in from the Kenyans who are watching. And we asked you today on a big question. Who do you think is responsible for the abductions? All right. And I can see here Wesley. Wesley, you didn't tell us where you're texting from, but he says enemies of Ruto's government are abducting them. And those boys also should be dealt with firmly for their deeds. That is Wesley. Someone here says it's obvious that Ruto's government is responsible for the abductions happening to our youths. What leaders like Ishungwa, close allies to Ruto, are saying is evident enough to prove the guilt. Rigathi, former deputy president, having been part of this government, cannot lie to Kenyans, as I strongly believe he was part of this practice before things were bad. Very interesting. I can see someone saying it's rhetorical, intertwined to state, but giving it a guess, some people in high authority might be responsible. Mutua Mwoka Joshua from Makweni saying, of course we should give this to the Lord. Thank you so much for that encouragement. I can also see someone saying, don't ask for the obvious. The word unobvious means something that is straightforward, which means no further explanations. And then he's concluding by saying it's the police. Keep sending them. 22151 is the toll-free number. And I just wanted you to know what some of the Kenyans are saying. Otieno, I want you to say something before I play Gachagwa's bite, who has been referred to.
Just a quick. Let me just support what Alid was saying.
Yes.
And the question he asked, what is the end game? Where is this leading to? And if you look at the profile of the people who are being abducted, they are either critics of the government or people who are in protests. If you look at some of the information we found in our published report, it tells you that at some point the idea was to go after all the people who were at parliament and abduct them or do something to them or punish them. And if you look at what the people who abducted are saying, they were being asked, why are you trying to overthrow the government? It means all of them, they'll tell you, one of the questions the abductors were asking them was, why were you on the streets? Why are you protesting? Who is funding you? Why are you trying to overthrow the government?
You know, it's interesting.
So
I'm sorry to interject. It's interesting because I interacted with one of those who said they were abducted.
Yeah.
But until the time we had a conversation, they said they were not really explained to why they were held incommunicado. No one really asked them any questions. So would you say generally all those who were abducted were asked these questions? Because the interactions I had with that person, that is Bob Njagi, if you follow his story, he has not come out to say this, who is funding you question came up, for example.
Read our reports online. You'll see the people we cite. Huh?
Okay, so we are on your site.
Yeah, but
okay.
but let me just complete the point I was making.
Yes.
So what that points to is that we are in a situation where freedom of expression is no longer respected and guaranteed. We are in a situation where freedom of the media is not guaranteed. Freedom of assembly, freedom to picket is not guaranteed. We are relapsing into a state of serious repression, the kind that we only saw in the 90s and 80s. And because of what happened in the 80s and 90s, people decided that to prevent what happened in the 80s and 90s, we need a new constitution that has clear safeguards.
Yes.
What they are doing is that they are ignoring the constitution and creating parallel structures and doing things outside the constitution. And for me, I think people should be very worried about even some of the speeches we saw, I think at the burial of Wetangula's mother, where people are actually gloating over abductions. Public leaders gloating over abductions and even threatening that families will feel pain. That to me is psychopathic.
Let's hear from former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. In many instances recently, he has accused his former boss, President William Ruto, of lying to Kenyans. Here's a glimpse of it.
Abductions, forced disappearances, and extrajudicial killings have become alarmingly frequent, to a point we now have certain quotas trying to justify this as a means of handling grievances. I say this because the victims are overwhelmingly young Kenyans whose only crime is the innovative ways they have employed to speak out against the political establishment. Unfortunately, this government strategy of trying to scare Kenyans into silence while they go ahead and lie, loot, and destroy our nation cannot and will not hold. In fact, it is just another example of how disconnected this particular administration has become with the reality of where Kenya is today.
Now I want to go back to Khaled, but even as we're engaging the citizens, it's important to see the feedback. Some are not giving their names, but somebody saying Ruto is responsible. Who else if it's not Ruto's allies? This one is not pointing fingers to the president, but his allies. Carlos from Homa Bay saying, I'm sure that Mr. President Ruto knows who is doing the abductions across the country. I also have here someone saying Al-Shabaab. That is the kind of information that he has. They didn't leave his name, but he's saying Al-Shabaab is responsible for the abductions. And some other very interesting feedback here. Please remember to leave your name. He's saying their own irresponsible behavior is abducting them. Where did morals go when we, young people, were taught to respect the elderly? All right. And someone says, this is Fox Cherangani saying political leaders who want sympathy from Wanjiku. Now you have seen the myriad of responses. And that brings me to the question, because when, head of institutions that we've talked about and the president, who I believe has intelligence, giving him information, says, I have no idea who's doing this, but it shall come to a stop. Where does this leave the whole nation or country if perhaps terrorists could hear that you have no idea what is even happening within your own country? It's a question that has come up. What do you think, Khalid?
Actually, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for the IG, it's embarrassing for the president, it's embarrassing for the cabinet secretary for interior to say they don't know what is happening over an issue that touches directly on their dockets. This means that they have no clue of what is happening within their departments. They don't understand what's going on. But to speak to the issue of the young Kenyans who are being abducted, and that they themselves are the ones who are abducting themselves with their utterances and their actions. Let's talk about patriotism for a second or two. Patriotism is loyalty to your country. Patriotism is not loyalty to your government. Actually, if you are a patriotic individual, you must hold your government to account because you want your country to move forward.
Does it have to be respectful? How you hold your government to account?
Freedom of speech. Namoya has talked about that. And if the law is clear, I agree totally, we must use the social media more responsibly, without a doubt. For sure, some of the things that are going out there, the abuses, and some of them are really obscene. But there is what is allowable, not acceptable, allowable by law. And if it does not break the law, then you cannot hold someone responsible, for that. So, yes, we should be responsible, but that is no justification. Absolutely no justification for such horrendous acts such as abductions. Because abductions are unconstitutional. We're not even talking about the day-to-day laws. We're talking about the Constitution, which has guaranteed Kenyans rights that cannot be limited. And when the state comes up and somehow intimates that it is behind those abductions, which are unconstitutional, then that is extremely, extremely worrying. Because if the Constitution can be violated by the state, what about us, Kenyans?
All right, Otieno, but what then do we expect moving forward? What particular actions would speak to some seriousness to this matter? Because all parties seem to be interested in a United Nation, abductions coming to an end. But what real actions do you expect maybe from the state, if you believe it's the state, that would show you that, well, it's not us, but we are working with you to defend the rights of these abductees?
Even if it is the state, there are mechanisms and institutions that should investigate and ensure there's accountability. But just to clarify, political leaders or government officials should not be talking about morals. Morals are addressed in churches and families and all that. When you're a public leader and you have sworn to defend the Constitution, you talk about the law. And when the law is violated, people are taken to court.
But we have national values in the Constitution?
Values are guiding principles to the laws that follow. And therefore, values are enforced by the law or are activated by the law. So the law is what you enforce. So leaders should be talking about the law. If people have violated the law, then they should be taken to court. If they haven't, then leave them alone until where the law is violated. So if this, your question was, what is the way forward?
Yeah, what is the way forward? How do you... Yes.
The way forward is very obvious. First of all, the abductions cannot go on, and they should never be happening. They have to stop.
Absolutely.
But that is not the end. When they stop, we need to know who was doing the abductions, and that's accountability. And that's where now institutions like IPOA, Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, Internal Affairs Unit within the police, the Ombudsman's Office, the ODPP, they come in to ensure that there's proper investigations, independent investigations, where those people found culpable are taken to court. And from what we have seen, we have these institutions being sort of hindered from doing their work. So the police seem to be struggling to free themselves, to get their independence and to do the work. The IPOA, as you have talked about, they are also struggling. So if that doesn't happen, then it means people will have to explore other means. Because right now, the way the system works is that you have to explore the local mechanisms. And the local mechanisms means IPOA has to investigate these cases and take them to court.
All right.
If the local mechanisms fail, then people have to begin to explore other mechanisms and options.
These other mechanisms, and I want to just bring in what was expected to happen as I think abductions protest today. They didn't really happen as expected. Perhaps you can just bring me up to speed, Khalid.
Yeah, so one, of course, very early in the morning, we started receiving news of the abductees being released.
All right.
So in a way, people were caught up in that, and the numbers didn't show up as expected. But also we know that for a fact, as activists and others, there were some divisive elements out there. We don't want these kinds of people, we don't want those kinds of people, we only want these people. We should not say Ruto must go and stuff like that. So that also contributed to the numbers not coming out. And people need to understand that for these protests to happen, it's more than just posting and doing videos and tweeting and retweeting. There is more to it that needs to go out for a successful protest to actually happen. But of course, every other day is a learning day, and we get to see more that we can possibly do better in many of these instances. And just to agree with Namoya, as Kenyans, the way forward, we must hold individuals responsible to book. I think for me, that's extremely important. As I said, we are not a banana republic. We're not a laissez-faire that whatever comes, it's fine. These individuals, whoever they are, for us to ensure we don't have a repeat of this spate of abductions and all that, we must know who they are. And they must have their day in the dock. That's number one, and it must now turn the priority. Of course, we have to find those who are still missing. We have to stop the abductions.
Yes.
But at the same time, we also have to know who is behind it. And for those who are doing it, we speak very clearly. Your day will come. We assure you your day will come. It may not be today, it may not be under this regime, but the day will come, we will know who was behind this, and we will hold you to account.
Even as you're speaking, and I just want to agree with you, we already had information that Billy Mwangi, Peter Muteti, Bernard Kavuli, and Ronnie Kiplagat, of course, have been released. We yet to know the abductors, but two are still missing. And I will say their names, so you remember their names. Steve Mbisi and Gideon Kibet. Like Gideon actually came out.
Kibet, yeah.
That's the information that we had just before we came on air. Gideon came out and confirmed that he has been found.
Has it been confirmed? Or somebody could be using his account. Has it been confirmed?
You're saying,
he's out?
But of course it was
to the sister.
Vocal Africa.
We spoke to the sister.
Yes,
Mercy,
confirmed that Kibet
on the phone with Hanifa, and she confirmed that yes, they've spoken to him, and he's on his way home.
And he's on his way home, probably almost home or home.
Probably home by now. So I will confirm after this.
All right. So remember that some are still missing, and like Namoya said here earlier on, the numbers that we are seeing are just but a tip of the iceberg. Even as we are concluding this conversation, I want to hear again from you, Otsieno, who's the Associate Director of the Human Rights Watch. Looking at the trajectory, I know you have said that we need to follow the Constitution, it's clear. But what would be your, because you teach Kenyans how to protect themselves. I don't know if it comes up at some point. What would be your word to the public? Because if fear is instilled in the people, then the rights are taken away. I think that's what they say. So for the public watching today, I'm just curious to understand what would be your final, remarks tonight for the viewer watching back at home.
Yeah, very, very, very quickly. One, the members of the public have a responsibility to hold their leaders to account. So they must not tire. They must ask questions. If it means protest, which is protected in the Constitution, they should protest as much as possible. That's their right. They should be free to express themselves as long as that is geared towards a greater good, which is to ensure that whatever ill that is going on, including the violations that we see, the abductions, people are held to account and families get justice. We know that there are threats. We have, like I mentioned, there are families we have talked to. They are looking for their missing relatives who are picked up by people they suspect were police. and those relatives have not been found. They have gone to police stations. Police are refusing to take the statement or give them OB numbers or other police. In some stations, police are threatening them and telling them, if you keep coming here, we shall say you are one of the people who are trying to overthrow the government by protest. This has to stop, and when this happens, Kenyans have to learn to come up. If there are those Kenyans who don't have a voice, there are ways of bringing this up. Let them not fear. There's Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. They should report those cases there. There's IPOA, whether they are prosecuting or not, at least a record at IPOA should be made. There are also lawyers who are willing to take up, like LSK, they're willing to take up cases pro bono. They should be able, we should be able to find ways of organizing and supporting these people. But Kenyans must not tire. They must exercise their rights as freely as possible.
All right, thank you so much. Hussein Khalid was the CEO of Vocal Africa, and indeed very vocal. What would be your closing remarks tonight?
I think for me, it's what the name of our organization says, be vocal, particularly in the communities. As Namoya has said, if you're afraid, we are here. But you should never keep quiet when your rights are trampled on. So Kenyans, whatever you are doing, wherever you are, please speak out.
I don't know if the batteries are fighting against your final remarks, but we have lost you, but we surely will have you again. Khalid Hussein, you said so much compared to what you were to say just as we close, but we hope you would have gotten that. But of course, just speaking on being vocal, and I want to appreciate you once again, Hussein Khalid, the CEO of Vocal Africa, for creating time, 15 years plus and still on, and also Otieno Namoya, many years just working on for the rights of people. That is the Associate Director for Human Rights Watch. So much. We are very, very appreciative of your presence and your indulgence on this matter. And for you who has been watching and sending your feedback and doing what you have to do, we want to appreciate you for being patriotic. Today I understood what patriotism means, courtesy of our guest at KT News KE, on X at Doris Anki. I want to appreciate the team that has been behind the cameras, who are making sure that you are informed. This conversation will not end. We will continue to follow and find the answer to the question, who is abducting the Kenyans? All right, Marisha Awiti has been on sign language. My name is Anki Doris Ombat. Be bold. Good night.